turn my Bluetooth. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Pigeon Whole Motorcycle Podcast, all the way from Austin, Texas. We have Mr. Gareth Maxwell. Roberts, how you doing, Gareth?
I'm doing very well, thank you very much.
I like when we use your middle name.
That's only ever used kind of in the context of kind of the film credits, really, and that's only because there was another dude out there called Gareth Roberts who was writing for the British TV series Doctor Who, and he had loads of credits before me. I didn't.
Do you know what? Guess what? I was going to tell you what I found when I was looking through. Yeah. I'm like, Gareth. Wow, I didn't know Gareth was in Doctor Who.
No, it's not me. Not me.
I'm glad it doesn't look like you.
No, and I'm glad I did it now. I'm glad I differentiated between me and him, because the dude just got done for sexual assault recently. So, yeah, he got sacked for being a sex pest. So I'm pretty glad that I stuck the Maxwell, it's just my middle name, but stuck the Maxwell in the middle, so it's people aren't thinking it's me.
Yeah, so you better keep the Maxwell in there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's for sure. So I've been badgering Gareth for a long time. Gareth and I have got to hang out a little bit here and there, and I think I met you the first time at Handbuild in maybe it was 17. Was the first time Craig and I went?
I was because I was thinking about this earlier. I was trying to work out when it was. I thought it was actually before that at some point. It was the first time we hung out properly, because you myself, and no, it was. Yes, it was 2017. It was Hamburg 2017, where you'd come up, you and Craig, you'd driven all the way up in the truck and all the way down in the truck with the dustbin, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, we were filming that weekend. We were filming that year for that Hamburg year for All in the Blood. And we kind of met up, and
that's right. Yeah, we got the. And then there's some other shenanigans. I actually have a picture I'm going to send you of a special guy that we met at one of the hand builds. That now I've basically my wardrobe upon his. So.
You know what? I found out a bit more about that too.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. He's famous stroke infamous. I think he's more famous in his own mind than infamous to everyone else. But anyway,
understood.
We'll leave that.
We'll talk about that off recording. That's probably a better idea. So now, since the time I met you till now,
short side, Dave. I think that would be quite a hard sight to behold.
Yes, I got my hot pants on right now too. So
I'm set. Anyone, actually, I'm just wearing the t-shirt. It's like
that's good.
In Texas, man. I'm from London. I'm not used to this heat, so I'm just, I'm going commando.
Just let it swing wherever you have to. That's good. So anybody that doesn't know Gareth, I don't know how you wouldn't, but during especially our lockdown thing here, the movie you should be watching if you haven't watched is Oil in the Blood, and that's your baby, right?
Yeah. We finished. So yeah, to people who don't know, Oil in the Blood was a documentary feature film that we finished and released at the end of last year. It's a full-length feature film. It's basically a film that kind of celebrates custom motorcycle culture. It took us 3 years to make. We travelled all around the world. We interviewed over 300 people, and basically the film is a kind of distillation of all these kind of, the words of all these wonderful people we met, but all these great events that we went to, and a few adventures that we went on. And yeah, it was released the end of last year. It's available on iTunes, available on Amazon. And it's going down really well. We're getting really good response from people. I mean, I've been involved in film. I've been making films for a long time. So kind of you finish something, and you're always slightly worried about how it's going to be received. So you brace yourself for a lot of kind of negative, bit whiny comments, because actually what usually happens is that the people with an axe to grind about what you've done are always much louder than the people who have actually enjoyed it. So you kind of sit there and you wait. You brace yourself and you wait for the shit to start flying. But with literally just two or three exceptions, it's been really, really well received. And I think the reason for that largely is because my intention when going into this was not to kind of impose my view of what this is on the film. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm not shy of an opinion or two. So I was kind of quite adamant at the beginning that it's like, it wasn't going to be like, a mouthpiece for me. It was going to be, a chance for people who are actually, at the heart of this kind of really interesting and valuable culture to kind of explain things themselves. So I think that, when people watch it, they feel that kind of the sense of generosity in which the film was made, and the sense of generosity in how the people who contributed in it to express themselves. So it's good. It's good. I'm pleased with it. Very pleased with it.
Yeah, and right before we started recording, I was telling Gareth that after doing we're at like 60 some episodes now, that a ton of the people, maybe I'm doing the audio portion of Oil on the Blood over here because I got to see so many people that I've talked, and actually to see them live on video it's great. And I'm so glad that anybody that's out there, do not rent this movie from Amazon or I just buy it, because I guarantee by the time you get through it, you're going to want to watch something else. Maybe a week later or a year later. It's got a ton of fucking information, a ton.
Yeah, that's the thing about it. It is a very it's a very dense piece. It's like that was another thing. That was one of the reasons why we spent so long shooting it and so long editing it, because so often, particularly with kind of motorcycle and kind of automotive content, it's like you'll see these documentaries or you'll see these TV series where they have really 40 minutes worth of interesting footage, and they'll pad it out, pull it out, and drag it out to an hour and a half, 2 hours long. Just as a consumer, just as a consumer and as an enthusiast, it's like that really irritates me, because it's just kind of lazy filmmaking in my mind. And because this film, we had this was an entirely independent production. We had the freedom to kind of to drive this how we wanted to. I wanted to make sure that that it was packed full of information, so that it wasn't something that people just necessarily would watch one time and then forget about it. It'd be something that perhaps they would it would trigger something, and a week later, 2 weeks later, they'd think, "Oh, that was really interesting." Or they'd see something, they'd hear your podcast, or they read something on Bike Exit, and think, "Oh yeah, I remember that person from Woll and Blood," and go back and just not necessarily watch the whole thing again, but watch the segment about that person. So it was more of a kind of a reference piece, really, rather than just a bit of disposable kind of entertainment.
The thing I enjoy about it a lot is that even if you're on Instagram and you see a bike by Callum or somebody like that, it's actually cool to go back and see more about them. I think what you've done is you give a face and just a great insight on this whole motorcycle culture. I think you've done it a great service.
Well, the thing is, one of the reasons for wanting to make the film is that I've been invested in I've been riding motorcycles my entire life. 40 odd years. I've been into custom bikes for many years. I've been very kind of vested in the culture, and I've seen the thing kind of grow, right? I've seen people kind of get better, develop their skills, and the bike's becoming more and more impressive. So kind of what happens is that as it grows, it gets slicker. So you go onto Bike Exit, right, and you see these amazing creations, photographed really well. You have a story which essentially focuses on the kind of the technical side, but also the success of the build, and which is the whole purpose of Bike Exit and sites like that. It's no way of criticism. They do portray the bikes and the builders in a very positive light, but it's quite easy for people who aren't necessarily involved in the kind of custom culture or don't know custom builders to kind of get this idea that they're kind of these kind of like rock star, superstar, kind of hugely successful, wealthy, well-funded individuals who kind of essentially have the easy life of celebrity. And that couldn't be further from the truth for any of them. I don't know a single one of them that even gets close to that kind of existence. I mean, you look at somebody like Roland Sands, who's somebody who's been developing a business for decades and is very good at what he does in every aspect of his business. He runs a successful business, but Roland is a very hardworking, honest man who works ceaselessly at, developing his business and keeping his business running and keeping his employees employed. And it's a hard graft. It's a hard graft even when you're at the more successful end of it. But for the vast majority of builders, they're guys who are paying themselves very, very little, if anything at all. They're working with very limited resources, with very limited tooling, in less than ideal environments, and it's a struggle for them. And for that bike that's up on Bike Exit for one day, and they're getting some glory for, that can be the results of years of hard labour. Working. If they're earning a living from it, they're earning what people are, a minimum wage,
right?
If not a lot more. If their business works beyond that, it's usually from selling parts or selling T-shirts in order to supplement what they do to build the bike. So that was the whole kind of the whole reasoning behind making the film the way that we made it. It was like, get to speak to these people and let them explain how it is that they do what they do, why they do what they do, and what satisfaction they get out of doing what they do. And just let them tell us. And I think that's, in a way, that's kind of one of the successes of the film is it allows, it gives the builders a rare opportunity to actually speak about what they do and to give people who may not know that much about the process some insight into actually the hard toil that it takes to build a custom motorcycle, particularly to build a custom motorcycle well. But even to build a custom motorcycle not very well,
Right.
It takes a lot of work, right? And that's another thing. It's like, for all those dudes who are out there kind of got full-time jobs, doing whatever, and they come home in the evenings and weekends, and they set themselves goals that far exceed their skill levels, and somehow they come out of this thing at the end with a custom motorcycle, which is an expression, it's an expression of themselves in some way, having learned a whole lot along the way. And it may be an imperfect beast to some people, but the very fact that they set out to do it in the first place and they achieved that goal is something to be celebrated in itself, right? It says a lot more to me, and it says a lot more to the kind of, if you will, the kind of soul of motorcycling than it does just going out and buying a brand new bike or a late model bike from a dealership on credit on terms and just riding it around and taking it back there when it goes wrong. It goes much more back to that idea that used to exist, particularly when I was growing up and before I was born. People kind of having a long-term relationship with their motorcycle and getting to learn what it is and keep it and work on it, keep it running. And it's
Right.
That's can only be a healthy thing.
Right. And with the movie, I think it's funny when you're talking about not expressing your opinion. I look at it as it's almost like 300 stories telling one, which is very cool.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. If it works like that, then if that's how you that's the conclusion that you draw from it, then we've achieved what we set out to achieve, which is exactly to do that.
Yeah, no, it's cool. All right, so I want to know when you're obviously you've been making films and doing media stuff for a very long time. What was the moment where you're like, oh shit, I got to make a movie about this? Like, how do you, was there a turning point or something you said, oh shit, now I got to go get it?
Well, yeah, there were a few factors in play, really. I mean, the first one was I've been becoming tired and weary of the fucking bullshit of working on independent feature films for the sake of making independent feature films, right? been involved in probably, I don't know, 12 or 13 independent features now, either as a producer, as a director. You know, most of them were just kind of technical or creative or business exercises. You know, they weren't passion projects. I mean, you know, maybe 2 of those were projects that I really kind of vested in emotionally. But you know, I'd always ridden bikes, and bikes were always that kind of, you know, they were, you know, the yang to the yin. You know, they were the thing that I did to keep myself sane outside of work. So I was very, you know, I saw no interest in. I had no interest in combining the two, really. But for, you know, as I got older riding motorcycles became kind of slightly more of a kind of solitary affair, right? It was just a thing that I did on my own, and occasionally I'd go out for rides with a couple of mates, but that became kind of increasingly less often. And then this whole kind of, you know, custom culture kind of, the current custom culture, because it wasn't invented with this present culture. It's been, you know, people have been customizing bikes since motorcycles were invented, right? And arguably, you could make the argument that kind of, you know, the guys who developed the first motorcycles were exactly the same as your shed builders now, right? Harley Davidson, you know, they came out with a tiny shed, all of it. So anyway, this kind of present culture kind of started to flourish, you know, kind of in the late, you know, 2008, 2009, started seeing all these really interesting bikes out there, and it really kind of perked my interest. And along with that came this kind of sense of community, really, which was really interesting for me, because it kind of coincided with the proliferation of broadband. So what happened was it was much easier for people to communicate with each other all over the world. So, you know, you'd be, you know, some dude in Tasmania built a bike on a CB750. I had a CB750 at the time that I was doing stuff to. So he'd do something. So I could get hold of him, right? I could email him, and he'd reply, and he'd say, well, you know, I did this, or I got that part from here, I got that part from Lowbrow Customs over in the States. And it's like, you know, then you start to see the guys in the Wrench Monkeys doing their stuff in Northern Europe, and then you'd see, you know, El Solitario doing their stuff down in Spain, and then people doing all sorts of stuff in every corner of the States. And it's like, and you could talk to people. People were posting images and later videos of what they were doing, not just of the finished bike, but, you know, then actually working on their shit. And that whole kind of community that grew, you know, became kind of galvanized by the shows that started happening. You know, this new wave of shows, you know, started off really with Brooklyn Invitational, and then, you know, but quick on the heels of that was, you know, the one moto show, Mama Tried, Hamburg show in the UK, Bike Shed, Wheels and Waves, and so everybody who was kind of talking to each other virally would come together at those shows and start meeting each other physically. You start, you know, you'd be making friends in ways that you'd kind of never made friends before, but there was this common bond. There was this really solid foundation, which was like this shared interest and passion in the thing that you do. And I just found it a really interesting phenomenon, right? And what also I found really interesting was that, you know, there were people of all ages, you know, people in their 50s, 60s, and then there were young, you know, teenagers, guys in their early 20s who were interested in the same stuff. And also there were so many more women who were interested in it. That was always the thing about motorcycling before. It was just like a fucking sausage fest. It was just a bunch of dudes being dudes, and it's like, you know, the whole kind of sexist bullshit that used to go with it was kind of tiring, right? And boring, and it was tiring, and it also kind of spoke to and spoke of, you know, a kind of human being that you necessarily want to hang out with, frankly. So this kind of new kind of thing that was growing was really refreshing, because it was like, you know, it crossed a lot of previously kind of very artificial borders and boundaries and stuff. Anyway, it just started flourishing and growing. I just kind of thought, well, you know, this is an interesting subject. This is something that needs to be documented, because, you know, who knows where it's going to go, how long it's going to last, whether it'll, in its present form, it'll fizzle away and it'll become something else. But we certainly were living in very special times in terms of motorcycling, so it needed to be, documented. So I caught my ex-boss at a very weak moment and pitched him, and we managed to get a yes. Well, so off we went, and he bitterly regretted it from that moment onwards, really, that we'd gone off and made it. But
right,
left the station, so to speak, as I say.
Wow. So how do you fund something like this? How do you get started funding something like that? I know after you get a little bit done, it's probably a little easier, but starting from just an idea.
Well, I was quite lucky because at the time I was working for a company that was a film finance and film production company. So we had a finance mechanism that was based on UK tax legislation that allowed people to reclaim 30% of their tax, 30% of their investment back against tax, and it's a structure that's in place basically to encourage people to invest in high risk startups. So we use that structure essentially to fund films. So we were a reasonably self-sufficient entity in the sense that we were able to raise the hardest part of film financing to raise, actually, which is the equity. We had a mechanism in place to raise that equity. So we were, our company was constantly, on a week-by-week basis, raising finance. So we would raise it into a pot, and then when that pot reached a certain threshold, then we would begin production. So that's kind of how that was the model that we used before. So we tapped into that model. But one of the things that's quite precarious about that model is that the legislation in the UK demands under that structure that you spend the money as you're raising it. So what you can't do is spend 2 years raising a budget for a film and then go and make the film. So you have to be spending it as you're raising it. So the problem with something like All in the Blood particularly was that at no point did we ever have enough money to finish the film. So we would shoot it in stages. So we would shoot, we would allocate some funds and we would spend those funds, and then we'd have to stop and then we'd wait till we raised a bit more. Because we had other projects going as well. Right. So, it was very stop and start, which was frustrating because originally we had intended to shoot the whole film in a year. So, in the year cycle of the world, the custom motorcycle world, hitting the seasons in each one of the shows as they came. But, the first year we couldn't do that. We got a lot done, but we didn't get everything done. That was 2016. So then 2017, we shot where we hadn't shot the previous year. So that's where we caught in Mama Tried that year. We caught the one show that year. We caught the Handball show that year, which is where we met.
Yeah.
It was irritating because it put the schedule back, but actually what it did do, it allowed me to kind of just have a little bit more perspective on it, and also kind of just really be able to assess what we were doing as we were going along, rather than just kind of shooting all the stuff and then kind of assessing what we had once we started editing. We also started editing as we were going, so we were kind of perfecting or distilling what we were shooting as we were going along. Because I started off with a list of questions for the interviewees, and it's like that very quickly kind of just
right. I'm sure it changed.
Because most of the people you're interviewing, right, they're not media savvy people, really. They're not people who spend their days talking to, being interviewed. They're people who spend their days working mostly on their own, if not in very small teams, in workshops. So you sit down in front of a camera, it's an awkward, it's an unfamiliar position to put them in. So then firing questions at them, I found it wasn't the best way to be talking to people. It was much better to be talking to people in a conversational way and letting the conversations unfold at the same time making sure that you covered the key points that you need to cover. And if that took 45 minutes, great. If it took 2 hours, great. It's like, it takes as long as it takes to get what you need. And actually, so the interviews would start even before we turned the cameras on, right? You know, I would make sure, if it was particularly if it was somebody I'd never met before. But, you know, whilst we're all setting up, I'd just be talking to the subject, and we'd just be chatting, and we'd be, you know, just so that by the time we actually turned the camera on, there was, you know, it was always like we turning the camera on in the middle of the conversation rather than at the beginning of the conversation. So because we had to, you know, we took longer to shoot it than we thought we would, it allowed me to kind of just be a little bit more, you know, to just get better at my interviewing technique and a little bit more efficient at getting the kind of information and knowing what kind of information I needed to get out of people. Because that was another thing. It's like, you know, the emphasis of the film changed in certain ways as we were shooting, because there were certain things I thought would be important to discuss at the beginning, which we just parked to one side at the end. We didn't even go there. The final film, because they weren't as important as the things that we needed to put in there, right? So it was either, you know, you either spend 10 minutes talking about something that's really important, or you spend 5 minutes talking about something that's really important, and spend the other 5 minutes talking about something which actually really is it that important, you know? Like the whole fashion aspect of, you know, like the associated fashion aspect that's been around this culture. I mean, it's like, it seemed like a valid thing to talk about to start with, but then the more we got into it, it's like, who gives a shit, really? Who gives a fucking shit if people turn their jeans up and wear Red Wings? It's like, it's such a kind of superfluous thing to be talking about when you're actually talking to people who have made life-changing decisions in order to focus on, you know, on scratching an itch. And that's the thing, that's the great thing about the film, is I come away from it thinking, you know, the thing that all of these people that we spoke to, every one of them has got an itch that they need to scratch, right?
Yep.
But
I see that.
One of them, that itch is in a slightly different place, and that's what's kind of fascinating about it, really. But none of them had the itch to turn their jeans up and wear Red Wing boots, so that's what we were talking about, that stuff, you know.
You know, it's funny too that I think a lot of people that aren't close to the scene think that, you know, motorcycle guys like these, you know, roughy toughy guys, but every single guy on there, the way they speak and everything, it makes you like them as a person more.
They're all philosophers. They are. You speak to Craig Rodsmith, you speak to Christian Souza, you speak to Roland, you speak to any of these guys. They're all philosophers, right? Because they've all made a life decision to do what they're doing, and you know, with each one of their skill sets, you know, being slightly different, but pretty much every one of their skill sets could be applied to other things and provide them with a much more comfortable and a much more stable living.
Right.
If they were working for more, you know, in a more conformist context, but each one of them has made a decision not to do that and to do what they're doing, and that's not, you know, none of it's whimsical. It's based on them thinking deeply and reasoning deeply in order to make those decisions. So they're all philosophers, every single one of them, you know,
right?
One or another, and that's that comes across when you talk to them. Right? It's like, you talk to them, you know, I talk to them. You know, you're not sitting there talking about, you know, bolt sizes and, you know.
No. You know, you bring up a point that's kind of funny, that a guy like Sosa, Rodsmith, you know, Max, any of these guys, anybody that you talk to, imagine if they took that skill or that one big strength they had and went out to try to be financially successful. These guys could be doing anything, but they follow their dreams and their heart, not going after money.
Yeah, but they wouldn't be doing the things that they love doing. They wouldn't be creating the things that they're creating. You know? They'd all have, you know, high-level engineering jobs, but they would be in industrial, it would be in industrial engineering, designing, I don't know.
And they'd be miserable.
Yeah, they'd be miserable. They'd be working in an environment that provided them no stimulation, no inspiration, and also, you work in those kind of environments. You tend to only be working on one aspect of the thing that you end up making. You may be working on a jet fighter, but you're not making a jet fighter. You're making one time. You're spending your whole life focusing on that one tiny component. And it's like these guys take something from conception to completion, all the way through. You're talking about all three of those guys do everything. Right? They do everything from the electrical to the fabrication to the mechanical to the design.
Right.
And that's what building custom motorcycles affords them. That's what it allows them to do. It allows them to express themselves and to tap into the kind of the totality of their skill set. But what it doesn't do for many of them is provide them with any financial security or any kind of long-term job security. But, and that's that's what I think it's important for people to understand if they're interested in this kind of thing. It's not just about how beautiful one of Craig's bikes or one of Max's bikes or one of Christian's bikes or one of Revival's bikes looks like in the photograph on Bike Exif. That's just the end of it, right? And that's just one tiny snapshot. That was the one day where they took photographs of it at the end, right?
Right.
And the whole thing's gone before, and stuff will go after, which is really what it's about, ultimately.
Right. Yeah, I because all I've done is working with Craig and everything, but watching the the final bike roll into a show or watching the final shoot of it, I still look at those bikes and the whole story behind whatever that 8 months or a year or whatever that bike says to me, the story, not the final project.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's cool. It's super cool. So did you learn it? Did you learn anything from interviewing all these guys that you were like? Something that you didn't think that you were gonna, or what did you take away that might have been different than what you thought?
I mean, I learned a lot. I learned a lot. I mean, it was a huge education for me. The one thing that I found really, well, not really surprising, but really, really interesting, and I took away very positive. It was that really, for 300 people that I interviewed, there were two arseholes. Just two arseholes. Everybody else were humble, earnest, generous with their time, erudite, and just, good dudes, people
Right.
who were, people who were just good, earnest, honest people who, were doing what they were doing because they loved doing it, for no other real agenda other than that, you do see some people come and dip into this thing, glory hunting, but, they don't last very long. It's too hard, right? There's not enough reward for all that effort, for the only reward that you value is a bit of glory, right? It's like, so they come and go very, very quickly. So I think in order to kind of have any kind of longevity kind of in this kind of culture or business or whatever you want to call it, there has to be kind of at the center of it all, there's got to be this kind of, this sense of integrity and in sense of desire, but also a kind of humility, because every day along the way there's these dudes are dealing with the harsh realities of trying to run a business, building one-off things. They've got no, there's no drawing on kind of research and development, and, just the economies of scale for any of these people. Even builders who are building limited series rather than one-offs, they're still only building 10 motorcycles or 15 motorcycles. And each one of those are different, and each one of them, they may follow a basic, a basic format, but each one of them is different, and each one of them has its unique challenges. And and then you compare that to, a big manufacturer, someone like Triumph, for instance, who bring out, a factory custom limited edition. There's 750 of them. It's like,
right.
that's at the most tiniest level. 750 of them, which are basically a slight variation on something that they're producing, 5, 10,000, 5s and 10s of 15s of 20,000s of. These guys are making one-offs or 2 or 3 offs, or a limited series of stuff from scratch. So there's got to be a kind of there's a hard-nosed financial realities around to do that. And what comes with those financial realities is a kind of kind of humility, I think, and that's what's really really positive and rewarding. Having spent my whole life dealing, working in, first of all the music industry, making music videos, advertising, making TV commercials, and then working in film, making feature films, having to deal with kind of like, a universe of self-interested, self-publicising, self-important, self-aggrandising arseholes who will do everything they possibly can to make your life as difficult as it possibly can be in order to kind of elevate their status even further. Going from that, to dealing with people who I've only got to send one email to, and they're like, I'd love to do an interview. When are we going to do it? You just let me know what suits you, and you turn up, and you're welcomed, and you're given the time, and you sit down, and there's none of that bullshit.
Right. I think that one thing I take out of these guys too is it must be hard, like you're saying, the limited rewards. These guys, a lot of these guys work by themselves. So when you don't see the rewards, but to keep yourself motivated to go back into the shop day after day, and you're by yourself, and there's no recognition or slap on the back, or they're just doing it pure out of passion.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Especially a lot of these guys that, they're doing it in the more northern parts of the world, where, they're doing it in long, cold fucking winters in, dark, cold workshops, It's like,
right.
It's hard. It's hard. Yeah. It's a hard existence.
Yeah.
I'm not, it's a good, honest existence, but it's not for everybody, I've got to say. It's
No.
like,
It seems like musicians, people, in other art forms like that, that the goal of those other things is to get recognized or be famous. Like, they're doing it for a reason, and it seems like the custom world is almost backwards. They're doing what they love, and then they can get noticed because they're doing something great that they love.
I think for most of them, they want to get noticed so they can carry on doing what they're doing.
Sure.
The recognition is the thing that gets, that gets the next client in through the door.
That's true.
Next client comes in the door, then that's the next stage of their business. And I think that's the difference, right?
Right.
They're more craftsmen than they are anything else. It's like people who build beautiful furniture, or architects who build beautiful buildings. They don't do it for fame. They do it for the satisfaction of creating that thing. And whatever fame comes from it is, it has a function, and that function is to get, is to ensure the next stage of their work. And that's what's different between them, most musicians, and certainly actors and filmmakers and people like that. Glory hunters. They want the fame because they want to be adored. They want to be recognised. They want to be noticed. They want the fucking status of it.
Right. Who is the first interview for Oil in the Blood? Who's the first guy you interviewed?
The very first interview we did, it was Adam Kay, actually. Adam Kay of Untitled Motorcycles in London.
Very cool.
And Adam was somebody I'd known for a long time. Him and I, first met him kind of, like 2010, 2011. And we were the first, we kind of helped develop, develop the bike shed in its very early days, when it was literally a bunch of people, a bunch of guys who were interested in custom bikes and thought it'd be fun to set up a blog. So we set up a blog and we featured bikes that we liked, and then we thought, well, why don't we put on a show? We put on shows, and Adam was involved back then. He was building bikes as well. So I've kind of known him ever since then, really. And so the first day we did 4 interviews, all in London. We did Adam. We did my mate Ross from the bike shed, who had been there right at the beginning, back with Adam. He's the only one who's still involved with it, actually. We did Callum at Debolex Engineering. That was the first of several interviews, actually, that with Callum. I mean, Callum's a really good friend of mine, and actually he went on to build the custom electric racer that we built to coincide with the release of the film, to help publicise the release of the film. And then we did a guy called Will Allen, who used to run a company called Cafe Racer Customs, and he was a young guy, incredibly talented. Set up this very ambitious company with very wealthy guy who had a collection of motorcycles. Will was incredibly talented dude, built great bikes, was, certainly his quality control was way ahead of its time, in the sense that he was making really high-end, reliable motorcycles. But, the business side of it, they couldn't make the business side work. Just was too labour intensive, and he couldn't charge what he needed to charge in order to do the work that he wanted and he needed to do. Now, I think, funnily enough, if he'd managed to ride it out, if he was still around now, I think he'd have an easier time of it. Because I think that one of the things that's happened as this culture's kind of developed is that customers, people who are commissioning custom bikes, have now been educated in what it costs to make a bike. So they're not, they don't go to builders now and say, I've got $8,000 and a 1971 CB750 that's not running. Can you turn it into, a bike exif worthy custom bike? It's like, no, you can't. So people are much more willing, prepared to pay a lot more money for the kind of bikes that they want. But back then there was this disparity between what people are willing to pay and what people are able to charge, and what it cost to actually produce that motorcycle at the end. So he had a hard time with it. But anyway, they were the 4 people that we started the first day of.
That's cool. Yeah, because I know obviously you're from London. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about your move from London to the States. What are you doing here? How did you get here? How did that all happen?
Well, it's something I've wanted to do over the years, and I spent a lot of time in the US for really since the early 90s. I've been traveling here for work and for pleasure. My sister lives in New York, so I have friends who moved to New York who worked in content production, like photographers and directors in the 90s. So I've got a bunch of mates who live in New York and Los Angeles. So I've been kind of traveling to the US quite a lot, and I was lucky that, the work that I did along the way, from music videos through TV commercials and then into film, got me to spend time working in the States. So I actually shot a chunk of a film called Kill Kill Faster Faster in New York in 2006, and then I shot the entire. We made a film called The Mortician in 2009, where we shot all of that in New Orleans. So I spent time in the US. I spent for a long time in the US. I've always tried. There's been times when I've tried to move here, but I've always been. Work has always kept me in London, basically, because that's where my contacts were, and that's where the work was happening for me. ironically, it's much more work, of the kind of work that I was doing and I do here in the US. But that's where I came from. That's where things were happening for me. So at any point to come here would have had to have been on spec. It would have had to have been like closing the door on that and coming here and seeing what see what we could do. And it's probably a bit chicken shit to do that. So
it's a big move, man.
So I knew Alan Stolberg from Revival Cycles. Anyway, I met him at Wheels and Waves down in Biarritz. I think it was either 2014 or 2015. Preceding that, I knew Revival's work. I was a big fan of Revival anyway. So it was like, I think I was actually planning the film at that point anyway when I met him. So I said, listen, at some point I'm going to have to come over and interview you. And he was like, yeah, sure, just give us a shout. So when we came to start shooting, I called him up and said, listen, can we come and shoot at the Handbuilt show? Yeah, cool, no problem. So we came and shot, and then we interviewed him here the day after the Handbuilt show, and we got on. The interviews went very well, which is interesting really, because the more I've got to know Alan, the more I know, hey, he's a mercurial character. Alan. It's like he has a very particular way of looking at things, and he has very high standards, and he expects people to have the same standards. So I can imagine if somebody interviewed him and he wasn't liking what he was being asked, or felt he wasn't being taken seriously, or whatever that stuff, he wouldn't go well. But no, it went very well. And anyway, we kind of, we consolidated a friendship from there, really. And then he came over the following year to the bike shed show. He brought a bike over. He hung out with, we hung out, him, my wife, and we just basically hung out with him while he was here. We then finished the film. I say, okay, so I call him up and say, well, listen, we built this bike. Can we come and show that in the Handbuilt show? And it would be great if we could screen it at the Handbuilt show. So that happened. And then when I was here over that, I was here for a couple of weeks. We just started we started talking, really. And it was, he was talking about the kind of media side of what Revival does. And they've got they had and do have a strong kind of content side to their business.
Right.
But he wanted to take it up to the next level, and he was slightly frustrated. He just let somebody who was doing the media here had just left, and he was saying, "Listen, I need somebody to come in and just take it up, take it to the next stage." And I'm like, well, funny enough, I need another gig because I can't go back to. I don't want to go back to doing what I was doing before All in the Blood. I enjoyed All in the Blood immensely. It's more rewarding for me to be making the kind of content that I'm inspired by than it is making the format. So I don't feel any real desire for my next move to be making another feature film, but my next move, I certainly want to be doing it with kind of custom motorcycle content, and not just custom motorcycle content, but we do a lot of. I'm interested in the classic bikes, restoration, that kind of stuff. But Revival do all that kind of thing. So he said, look, listen, would you want to come and move? Would you want a job here? I'm like, yeah, of course I'd want a job here. Yeah. So we agreed to it, and that was it was April last year, and then it took until November to get the visas sorted out, which was one of the miserable experiences in my life. Which was interesting because I had exactly the same visa 10 years ago when we went and shot in New Orleans, and I couldn't even remember applying for it back then. It was so easy. So I filled in a form. Someone filled in a form in the office. I signed it. Bang. Next thing, I just had to go to the consulate, get it stamped. Bang. I've got the visa. But this time around, it was a whole different thing. It was quite a stressful process, really, because there was quite a lot of. It just wasn't pleasant. But anyway, so that's how it happened.
Wow.
So I came here, got here at the end of December, and working in Revival, kind of producing content for it, really.
Yeah. And I'm sure that everybody listening to this is, following Revival, and the content you guys are putting out is fantastic, man. You guys are really cool. Not only great information, but the way it's shot and everything is just fantastic. Hats off to you, all of you guys over there.
Well, we're constantly looking to improve it. Yeah, we are. I mean, there are certain considerations here which I hadn't had previously. I've always worked in organisations where producing the content was the whole purpose of the company. That's not the case here. We're a motorcycle shop. We build custom motorcycles and we restore classic vintage motorcycles, and we do a whole host of other things related to that. And the media side of it is just one aspect of it. So, there was a culture, not a culture shock, because I knew I was going to have, that would be the case. But there's been, I've had to adapt to, dialing in a set of priorities of other people here, which were not necessarily priorities I've had to deal with in the past, and also, just things of, how we fund the content here. We don't have an exterior, we don't have funders who fund the content. It's all self-generated. It's all funded in-house. So, there are certain, boundaries within which we have to work, but we are constantly trying to improve how we do things, and we've got plans to improve that even further. But the thing is, the great thing about working here and shooting stuff here is like, this place is built on like rock solid foundations, right? Because it's everything that the company does comes from that workshop down there. Right? So everything else is fed by that. Everything else is led by that. So, you're dealing with a level of integrity for producing this stuff that you don't have to, you don't have to create. We don't have, I don't have to be, I don't have to protect anybody. I don't have to kind of make things look a certain way when they're not that way, because they are as they are, right? We shoot in the workshop most of the time. We certainly shoot with only people who work here, so everybody knows what they're talking about, and the things that they're making, are interesting and offbeat. Whether it's a custom, high-end custom Jackass with Ed Boyd, the head of industrial design at Dell, or whether it's working on, a Jaguar E-Type that was a barn find. It's all interesting stuff. It's all interesting stuff for geeks, for motor geeks, for anybody who's into this stuff. And,
Right.
And we are lucky because Alan is good on camera, right? So he's very comfortable on camera, and he talks effortlessly on camera. So, it's always pretty, and we have other people here, particularly like Alec, for instance, again, very comfortable talking on camera, charismatic guys. So it means that the way in which we present stuff isn't kind of like so often when you see, motorcycle content where somebody awkwardly standing there reading something or regurgitating something that's scripted, or feeling like they have to shout everything in order to make a point. It's so yeah. There are good things in place here. That means
That's good. If you notice, you go through Instagram, and 95% of the motorcycle content doesn't have human beings in it.
No. Probably best. Well, actually.
I got fortunate enough to work with a guy who's not so bad on camera, so that's kind of fun for me.
Yeah, well, Craig's funny, man. He's like, he's naturally funny. But the thing is that's the thing, is you watch Craig's videos and you watch Revival videos with Alan in it. It's like you're seeing the dudes as they are. I mean, Alan's no different off camera than he is on camera. Craig is no different off camera than he is on camera, right? And that's the key to it. That's the key to why they're good at, they're so watchable. And I also think that's one of the reasons why, actually, I think that they would find it difficult working in a TV environment, because the moment that you start to get either one of those guys to try and say something that's contrived or say something that's kind of scripted. It's like, it all starts to go wrong. Because they're also, people, you remember people like Craig and people like Alan, they march the beat of their own drum. They do what, they do things in the way that they want to do them and feel comfortable doing things. And they're not, by nature of what they do and the careers and the businesses that they build, they're not people who are told what to do. It's like, I can't direct Alan in the same way as I can direct an actor, for instance.
Sure.
It's the same with Craig. You don't direct Craig in the same way as in which you would direct an actor.
Right. The only directing Craig is now try to say that without saying fuck 5 times in that sentence. That's the only directing that goes on. Then he says it 7 times. If you try to correct him.
You do 52 takes and then you abandon it. Go, okay, if you want to say fuck.
Isn't that the truth? Hey, I had another question, just one question that I wanted to know. So you guys traveled around and did a bunch of these premieres. I know Craig went with you to one or a couple over in Australia. Did you have one of your premieres that touched you more than another, or you had a favorite one that you went where you were completely satisfied?
I mean, they were all great. Because, first of all, every screening we did, the film was genuinely well received, and people said some really, really nice things about it. And it wasn't just people saying really nice things about it. Actually, I didn't need smoke blowing on my ass in that way, but people got it right. They understood what it is we tried to do, and also people just. They resonated with it. They enjoyed seeing these people that some of them they know, most of them they didn't, and seeing a side of those people and the process that they hadn't seen before. So people enjoyed it, which was great. I have to say though, the first screening that we did, which was the big premiere in London, was the one I enjoyed the least. And that was because it was like, it was a 600-seat theatre. I must have known 550 of those people who were in that theatre. At that point, I hadn't shown it to a group of more than 4 people, and they were people who we worked with, right? So that was really nerve-wracking. Really stressful, and people were saying something, people were great afterwards, but frankly I didn't believe them. I just thought, well, they're just saying nice things because I'm their mate, right? So it took a few screenings after that for me to actually, where people were saying similar things, for it to be okay, well, that is a genuine response to what people are seeing in the film. It's just my mates trying to make me feel better about some awful waste of time, The thing is, it was a very personal piece for me. It's the first time I kind of put anything that I was passionate and involved about and cared so much about on film, and that was a very uneasy thing for me to do, present it, because I'm like, well, I don't have those professional kind of walls to put around this. There's no distance from this. This is like, it's a bit of me up there. This is me. And also, I felt a great responsibility because, a lot of the people in it are people who were my friends before I started, or have become friends since, and if not, my friends are people who I deeply respect, and I didn't want to misrepresent them. I wanted to present them in a way that they felt that that they felt happy with, but felt that they were given an opportunity to, talk about something that is their life. So I felt a big sense of responsibility, and that was kind of like, that was stressful, I have to say. By the time we got to Australia, it had been screened a fair few times, and I suppose that those two premieres in Australia were the ones I really enjoyed the most. I think, it was fun to be out there with Craig. It was fun to be going back to Australia with Craig, right? Because he hadn't been back for a while. you know, it was organised really, really well by, you know, a bunch of dudes who went over and above the call of duty, really. You know, Giles and Andy from Sabotage, you know, were really, you know, were really, were just great, you know. The Pipeburn dudes were really cool. And just they organised it really, really well. It was really touching, really, because they hadn't, you know, we hadn't interviewed the guys from Sabotage, so they had nothing to gain from it. And, you know,
Those guys are great, man. Those guys are
really, really cool, really cool.
Support. They're just a great group of guys.
And they were super, super slick. You know, super slick. You know, Andrew from Pipeburn was, you know, well, he wasn't even at Pipeburn at that point. You know, things that, you know, he'd left Pipeburn, but he, you know, he was still in, he still made sure that he was really well involved with it. And, you know, it was really slick. And then when we got down to Melbourne, Jeff from Return to the Cafe Races again, you know, was really, really helpful, really friendly, you know, the four of them. So, you know, the events went really, really well. You know, they were very slick, great venues, great audiences. So I think you know, that whole process was really enjoyable. The only problem with it, we were only there for a week, and we should have been there for a lot longer.
Right. No, it's nice to see all these people that have rallied behind you and supported all the way through. Even the guys from, you know, Fed Moto in Chicago. That was a great screen. That was a cool theater too.
Yeah, it was nice to go to Chicago. Yeah, you know, those guys are just super cool. You know, there's so many people along the way who've been really supportive of it. That's what's been really, you know, really touching about it. I mean, you know, there was a bit of a war story with this film. So, you know, what happened was that the company that produced it essentially ran out of money before we finished it. And, you know, so we didn't have the resources to be able to launch the film the way that we had hoped to launch the film. And, you know, we still, everything, you know, all of the proceeds, you know, from the sales of the film so far have just gone back to, you know, paying off debts on the film. You know, none of us is, you know, we're not going to see anything from it. You know, hopefully we'll get to a point where everybody's paid off, and that's the point. But, you know, so we kind of self-released the film, really, and we had no budget for, you know, publicity, you know, for marketing or publicity. So everything that we did was grassroots, you know, and it was incredible the amount of support that we got, you know, the amount of time, the number of people who posted their stuff up on Instagram, pushed the dates out, you know, who just did everything they possibly could to help us get the word out about the film. And, you know, that says so much really about the kind of, this kind of community stroke industry, whatever you want to call it. So the amount of support that we got, because if we hadn't had that support, it would have just come and gone. You know, nobody would have known about it. You know,
Right.
it would be dead and buried.
Right. Well, I think as this comes out to anybody listening right now, and obviously Gareth didn't say anything about this, but I would love to see everybody rally behind and support Gareth and the project, and for bringing up our community that everybody's in. So rent it, watch it, repost a picture of it, tell people to watch it, because this is obviously he didn't do this to make money. He did this because it's his passion, and it's great.
You know, we had, you know, certain points throughout the process, we had, you know, sniffs of interest from certain, you know, certain broadcasters and stuff. But, you know, what came with those sniffs of interest, there were a lot of promises, but a lot of demands, you know. It's like, oh, you need to have a celebrity presenter, or you need to put more drama in it. You know, you need to put some conflict in it. You need to have one builder bitching out another builder. You've got to have people kind of like throwing things around the workshop. And it's like, no, we're not doing any of that bullshit. You know, you can keep that to whatever, but that's not this. So, you know, we burnt a couple of bridges as far as I was concerned, but it was just like we only had one opportunity to do this, and it was like, you know, I'm only doing it once. So, I want to do
Right.
it. If that means that we have to, that compromises our ability to get, to get financed and our ability to have a huge publicity campaign in the end, and so be it, right? So,
All right. Well, hey, so getting close to wrapping up here, I'm going to ask you this question. I have two questions for you. So, Gareth, if you've listened to any of the other podcasts, I want you to nominate two, three different people that you would, because I know you haven't listened to shit, brother. I know you're my friend, but I know you haven't listened to shit. I'm just saying. So, I want to hear three people that you would love to hear on the show, but I'm going to give you a minute to think about that. And I have one last film question for you. Um, the two guys that you said that you met that were assholes, two out of the 300,
yeah.
did they make the film?
No, it didn't.
Yeah. That narrows it down who they're not anyway. I don't want to know who they are, but
I'll tell you privately. I'm not certainly not going
yes.
to say. Yeah, most people who know those dudes know they're assholes anyway, so it wouldn't be news to anybody. But no, they're not. So um, no, I mean, they they're arseholes not because I personally dislike them, but they were, in both instances, they were very, they were just slagging other people off. They were being bitchy. They were being snidey, and it was just like,
No, thank you.
we don't need to, that's not what this documentary is about, and then there's no benefit in including them anyway. So, no, they're away. And they all got very shitty about it. One of them sent me a few nasty.
Well, guess what? That's where you get for being an asshole.
That's exactly what I said.
They just go hand in hand. Don't be a dick and you'll show up in the movie.
I didn't force you to say what you said. I didn't force you to slag off who you slagged off. You did that, of your own free will with no invitation. So it's like, what do you expect? It's like, behave yourself and conduct yourself in a positive manner, and we would have featured you.
Exactly.
Nothing else. It's got nothing to do with where you live. It's got nothing to do with the motorcycles you work on. It's got to do with the fact you're a fucking arsehole about other people. Something. See?
That's why I love you, brother. All right, so let's hear some people that you want to hear on the show.
Well, I mean, you've got to speak to Alan at Revival, Alan Stillberg at
I'd
Revival.
love to.
Um,
And also, I want to talk to Ellen. I want to hear a report on the. Thanks to a nice supporter of our show, which I'm going to make I've actually bought my tickets to come to Austin in November. So
fantastic, fantastic.
yeah, I can't wait to talk to Alan about the hand-built 2020s here still.
Yeah, no, you should. And also, I think it'd be interesting to talk to him about, just how he's handled this whole coronavirus thing. Because, there's a story there, and there's a story in how he's conducted himself and how he's, managed to keep Revival on track, and that's it's an interesting story. Really.
Awesome.
I think it'd be interesting for you to speak to Callum at Bolex Engineering.
If you listen to my show, I already talked to Callum. He talked shit about you the whole time.
Did he really? Okay.
He was terrible. He hates you. He hates you. He had awesome things to say. Callum is fantastic, dude.
Yeah, cool. You spoke to the Wrench Monkeys would be really interesting to speak to.
I have not. Wrench Monkeys.
Yeah, those guys. Well, they were one of the very first people in Europe to be doing cool things, and they were building really interesting bikes. Back in 2007, 2008.
Right.
And you've got to get David Boras from El Solitario as well. He is a really fascinating dude.
Awesome.
Fascinating dude. We went down to So essentially what we did, we field tested a lot of the theories that we developed throughout the film in a trip to the Sahara. So David built these three basically kind of Dakar bikes out of Harley Sportsters. And we took, we drove down to Morocco and took them out into the desert and filmed them. And that was a trip. That was an absolute trip.
I bet that was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was full of incident, full of event, but incredibly successful. Like him and his crew were, riding these big, heavy, souped up Harley Sportsters on, on sand dunes, and they'd have those things dancing. Guy called Mauro Aberdini, who works out a company called Classico in Madrid, was one of the riders. And he's like this dude's in the mid-50s, super fit, like possibly the best off-road motorcycle rider I've ever encountered. He was just absolutely amazing. But David's a real kind of tour de force. He's been there since the beginning, and he has a very particular way of doing things. And
That's it. What's his Instagram?
I think it's El Solitario WTF.
Awesome.
Yeah.
If I can't find it, I'll just have you send it to me via whatever, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Well, those guys are great, man. I appreciate that. And you could put in the good word for Alan. Tell him I'm coming after him.
Yeah, well. There's another dude you might want to talk to as well, who'll be really funny, and but you probably need to subtitle them. And that's Down and Out. They're from Sheffield in the UK, and they've been building bikes since like the 80s, and they've done everything from scooters to choppers to cafe racers, and they're really, really good at what they do. But they are real, they're really interesting.
Awesome.
They're fun. They're one company who's actually really managed to create and sustain a business model for creating custom motorcycles now, and I've been doing it for quite a long time actually. So
awesome. No, that's really cool. Anybody else you wanna say? Because I love talking to guys like you've only talked to 300 different people. Obviously, we'll talk off air. We'll get some other. I should have called you before I did all this stuff to get some pointers because I don't know shit about shit. So just kind of roll with it.
Because the thing's going so well. So there you go.
Yeah,
but there are a whole bunch of people, particularly in Europe, who if you get a chance to talk to, who would be glad. I mean, it's the same when we shot the documentary. When people, people are glad to talk about this stuff.
I've yet to have anybody tell me no.
Really? Well, that's good.
Which is great. Just really.
Have you had anyone on that you thought was an arsehole? You don't have to mention it.
No, you know what? I have not had to not post one, and I've only had to redo one, because that was our friend Anthony Partridge, of course, who said a lot of stuff that couldn't be broadcasted anywhere.
I
love him. He's something else. He should have his own movie about something. I don't know.
It's a fucking trip, Anthony. I mean, we've been on a few road trips, maybe.
He's just it's exhausting even to talk to Anthony. So I gotta rest up for a day to hang out and party with him. I don't know. I'll need to rest 4 days after, I think, too.
That's what's wonderful about this whole thing. It's just like the characters you meet, right? The people you meet. I mean, where else would you meet people like Anthony Partridge? Where else would you meet people like Craig Rodsmith?
Nowhere. No.
I mean, me and Craig have become super. We become really good mates. Wow. We're like the two old dudes from the Muppets who just sit there on the balcony, just
You are. You said it, not me. You're younger than me, though.
Yeah, we get on the phone to each other and just chat away like a pair of old fishwives. It's hilarious.
It's bad. I'm going to record one of those conversations.
Don't.
That would be fun. You know who wouldn't be happy with that? The real Ron F would not be happy about that.
You should get him on. You should get Ron F. You should get the real Ron F.
You know what? I think that we should. And I need you and Craig to help me give him questions, though, because I won't know.
I don't want to. Yeah, just see what the dude has to say about life.
You know what?
That's really interesting.
Okay, we're going after him. That'll be our surprise, our 100th episode with the real Ron F. to go over the podcast and see what he thinks about it, too.
Yeah.
It'd be awesome. Well, Gareth, man, thank you so much for your time, brother. I'm sorry to take time away from the family.
It's great to speak to you, man. Yeah.
We'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'll come down and see you. But thanks, brother, very much. I wish you the best of everything, and I can't wait to keep those revival freaking great content coming.
We will. Cheers, mate.
All right. See you, buddy.